Tonight on KPBS Evening Edition, Congressman Duncan Hunter comes clean.
I failed to monitor and account for my campaign spending. I made mistakes, and that's what today was all about.
A guilty plea in the Republican Congressman's corruption case. Team coverage on his reversal, the sentencing, and the prosecutor's witch hunt remarks. And backing out, why California Senator Kamala Harris is ending her run for president.
I hope that they will be involved with the politics and they get into a higher positions.
The shifting political power in East County, a growing immigrant community looks to become more engaged. And raising the alarm about climate change. Former Vice President Al Gore is in town. We'll go there live. KPBS Evening Edition starts now. Good evening. It's Tuesday, December 3rd. Thanks for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. For more than a year, Congressman Duncan Hunter called the case against him a politically motivated witch hunt. Now he says he made a mistake, and it's one that could send him to prison. Today, the East County Congressman pleaded guilty to one count of misusing campaign finances. Before today's reversal, Hunter was set to go to trial next month. He now faces sentencing in March. We have team coverage tonight, starting with KPBS reporter Priya Sridhar.
The plea deal between the embattled Republican congressman and federal prosecutors means he will face up to 5 years in prison and a $250,000 fine. Hunter was originally charged with 60 felony counts of using $250,000 in campaign money for personal expenses. He made a brief statement to reporters after the hearing.
I failed to monitor and account for my campaign spending. I made mistakes, and that's what today was all about. So that being said, I'll have more statements in the future.
In an interview with local news station KUSI on Monday, Hunter said he made the decision to change his plea because of his kids. He said he hoped that his wife, Margaret, who was also charged in the case and pleaded guilty to one count in June, would be spared a prison sentence. Today, federal prosecutors say they would be mindful of family care, but they said Duncan Hunter's sentence would not impact his wife's.
He was indicted and he pled guilty today because of his own misconduct and no one else's. This is not a case about mismanagement or accounting errors or mistakes. Duncan Hunter intentionally took money that did not belong to him, and he used it for his own benefit. For that, he has been held accountable.
Prosecutors said the plea deal did not include an agreement from Hunter to resign from his 50th district congressional seat, but they believe it was understood by Hunter and his defense team.
Today's plea is to the major count of the indictment and effectively puts an end to his political career. Rather than re-election, Mr. Hunter now faces resignation, disgrace, and imprisonment.
Duncan Hunter's sentencing is scheduled for March 17th. His wife Margaret's is set for April 13th. Priya Sridhar, KPBS News.
And Priya Sridhar is here now to talk more about the case. Priya, thanks for being here.
Thanks.
And you've been following this case for a while, and the indications are that Hunter will resign his congressional seat. What happens if indeed that does become the case?
Right, so all signs are pointing to the fact that Congressman Duncan Hunter will resign. And if that happens, we spoke to Registrar of Voters Michael Vu, who said that all the power then falls in Governor Gavin Newsom's hands. And there are three likely scenarios that could play out. He could simply choose not to fill the seat, he being Governor Gavin Newsom, which would mean it would stay vacant until a new representative is chosen in the 2020 election. The second option is he could call for a separate special election that would have to be held at some point in the next 4 or 5 months before Duncan Hunter is sentenced. Or the third option is that he could consolidate a separate special election with the regularly scheduled primary for the general election that was supposed to take place on March 3rd. And of course, Duncan Hunter had been campaigning in that election against former Congressman Darrell Issa, Carl DeMaio, and State Senator Brian Jones on the Republican side, and then his former Democratic opponent, Amar Campanajjar.
And so what happens if he doesn't resign?
So if Duncan Hunter doesn't resign, he actually has until this Friday to file his re-election paperwork with the Registrar of Voters. But if he doesn't resign, he could also choose to serve out the rest of his term, which could mean that he could be spending the last few months of his term behind bars.
Thanks for following this case, Priya Sridhar. We appreciate it. So what's next for Congressman Duncan Hunter? We know the sentencing will happen in March, but there are still many questions tonight, including whether Hunter will serve time and what will happen to his wife. KPBS reporter Matt Hoffman takes a look at what's ahead.
I made mistakes, and that's what today was all about.
Pleading guilty, a major reversal for the congressman who has maintained he's innocent.
And the indictment is all they have. They only have what you've now seen. That's it. I've done nothing wrong, and I say bring the trial now.
But by making a deal with federal prosecutors, Hunter stopped that from happening.
Obviously, they made a right turn.
Former U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of California, Chuck LaBella, is surprised Hunter struck a deal.
Sometimes they have a change of heart. They say, okay, I see now what the government is saying.
Hunter says he does not want a public trial in order to protect his kids.
Someone does something, takes responsibility for criminal conduct, because they don't want to put their family through the stress and the trauma of a trial. That's real. That's not fake.
Hunter was indicted last year on 60 counts. He agreed to plead guilty to the main one of conspiring to misuse campaign funds, which carries a maximum 5-year sentence and a $250,000 fine. If Hunter resigns his 50th congressional seat before sentencing, LaBella says it could help him.
If I was a defense lawyer, I would argue that, look, that's part of the punishment, Judge, you should consider. He's now left office.
Prosecutors did indicate they would seek over a year behind bars. Hunter could avoid prison altogether, though, but LaBella says that's a slim chance.
Yes, it's possible that he'll get probation, and yes, it's conceivable that he could get 5 years in jail. Both those things are conceivably possible. I think the more likely result is that there is going to be a disposition by the judge that gives him a period of incarceration.
Ms. Hunter, have you had a chance to talk to your husband?
In June, Hunter's wife, Margaret, took a deal, pleading guilty to the same charge.
Her cooperation clearly led to his plea of guilty. Without her cooperating, I think there would be a strong possibility of his going to trial. I think she'll get a probationary period. She's not going to serve any period of incarceration.
Will you be seeking a pardon?
Hunter is a big supporter of President Trump, and LaBella says you can't rule out the potential for a pardon. No word on that, but if it did happen, it would likely come after his sentencing in March. Matt Hoffman, KPBS News.
All of this was happening amid the backdrop of the 2020 campaign. Here's how some of the candidates in the 50th District are reacting. Republican Carl DeMaio says while this must have been a tough decision for him, Hunter's decision to plead guilty is the right one for his family and his constituents and shows that no one should be above the law, especially members of Congress. And Democrat Amar Campa-Najjar says, my thoughts are with Major Hunter and his family. I want to thank him for serving our country. Last year, KPBS interviewed Congressman Hunter ahead of the 2018 primary election. This was before he was charged with corruption, and this is what he had to say to KPBS Midday Edition's Jade Hindman.
We've interviewed several of your challengers in the 50th District, including El Cajon Mayor Bill Wells, a fellow Republican. He said he believes you'll eventually be unable to continue as a congressman because of the ongoing federal investigation into your alleged personal use of campaign funds. What's your reaction to that?
I don't have a reaction to it. It's been like a year and a half, I think, since this thing started. I've heard nothing. I've had no involvement with the Department of Justice. We've been doing nothing, actually, because we haven't been asked to do anything.
And a lot more on this story.
People run for office all the time. People like higher power all the time. And you'll see politicians saying stuff like that all the time.
Did you misuse campaign funds?
No.
Were there mistakes made?
No.
No mistakes made?
I did not misuse any campaign funds. But thank you for asking.
And that was KPBS's Jade Hindman. We have a lot more on this story online at kpbs.org. You'll find more reaction from candidates running in the 50th District and a discussion on the political fallout on the KPBS Midday Edition podcast. She calls it one of the hardest decisions of her life. In a surprise announcement today, Senator Kamala Harris ended her run for president.
I'm not a billionaire. I can't fund my own campaign. And as the campaign has gone on, it has become harder and harder to raise the money we need to compete. In good faith, I cannot tell you, my supporters and volunteers, that I have a path forward if I don't believe I do.
The California Democrat says it all comes down to money. Recent polling showed Harris amid a crowded field of candidates polling in the single digits. 15 Democrats remain in the race. Senator Harris says she will continue to advocate for the causes and issues she raised in her campaign. New details tonight on that ongoing problem in Poway involving its water. A state official tells KPBS it's possible water quality results may not be known for several more days. A boil water advisory has been in place since Saturday. As a result, many restaurants and other businesses have had to close. The city says the cause traces back to a storm drain that backed up into a water treatment facility's reservoir during last week's storm. The city also says the water is within health standards, but issued the boil water notice as a precaution until state testing results come back. Bottled water is being given out to those who want it. Part of the affected reservoir is being drained and disinfected. A new push is being made to end a decades-long environmental crisis along the border.
The stench of sewage was so powerful last week that you could smell it blocks away from the beach. This is killing the health of residents of South San Diego and IB and Coronado.
That's Imperial Beach Mayor Serge Dedina. He's part of a bipartisan local coalition. Local cities and government agencies are calling for a vote demanding the federal government take action to end the sewage crisis at the Tijuana River Valley. Local leaders are requesting the EPA carry out projects to stop and restore the biological integrity of the river valley. The involved cities will hold votes in the coming weeks. Climate change is front and center this week in Spain, where the UN climate conference is underway. It's also center stage tonight in San Diego with an event featuring climate activist and former Vice President Al Gore. KPBS environment reporter Eric Anderson is live at the Salk Institute in La Jolla with a preview of tonight's event. Eric?
Maya, here we are at the Salk Institute, people working hard in these laboratories. And if this area doesn't look quite familiar to you yet, maybe this will help. This is their iconic balcony here on the Salk Institute campus. Just behind us over here is where Al Gore is going to be delivering his slideshow on climate change. Now, that slideshow might sound familiar because it's very much the format he used in his 2006 documentary, An Inconvenient Truth, which raised awareness about climate change back in 2006. He got an Academy Award for that. Now, you may not know this, but Al Gore actually took a climate warming class at Harvard University, and his professor at the time was Roger Revelle, who made his name here at Scripps in San Diego as a world-famous oceanographer. He was also one of the first scientists to record carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. Now, Laurie McDonough was one of the people who helped bring the former vice president here to San Diego. We talked to her earlier today. Here's what she had to say.
It's a meeting hosted by the American Academy of Arts and Sciences. This is an organization founded in 1780 by John Adams and other scholar patriots to generate new knowledge that is useful and provides advice to the nation. So this meeting is part of a history and a tradition of convening leaders from every field and profession to examine important issues of the day.
Now, the vice president, former vice president, has been talking about climate change in terms of a crisis. He calls the current situation around the warming global climate much like the terrorist attacks on 9/11 or the bombing of Pearl Harbor. They're wake-up calls that something needs to be done. And he's not afraid of taking a political position. He says he thinks the Green New Deal is a wonderful aspirational policy that takes bold steps towards fixing this issue. We'll hear a little bit more about what he has to say tomorrow. Eric Anderson at the Salk Institute.
Thanks for that report, Eric. And it's looking dry out there right now, but it is going to be a wet night in San Diego, and the rain is expected to last through tomorrow morning's commute at least. Regina Miller has a closer look at a new storm heading our way.
Well, as we take a look here across Southern California, you can see how we've got plenty of clouds and see a little bit of the green showing up there on the radar. We're starting to see some of that moisture coming in, and we are going to be dealing with some rainfall here for tonight. In fact, there'll be some areas of some heavier rainfall, especially as you head into the mountains. Along the coastline tonight through tomorrow, we could be dealing with as much as maybe a ½ an inch up to an inch. Higher amounts as you head into the mountains. We could be in the 1 to 2 inch range there. So tonight, periods of rain developing. Our overnight low is 59 degrees. Our overnight low here into Escondido is at 54. Into Chula Vista, 59 degrees. We've got periods of rain coming in. Starting off at 7 p.m., showing you our futurecast. Not showing much, but then continuing through the nighttime hours. This is midnight. We see some areas of rain. And then for tomorrow, this is at 6 o'clock as you're waking up in the morning. So the morning commute, we are going to be dealing with maybe some pockets of some heavier rain through tomorrow midday. By the afternoon hours, just some lingering showers for the late commute. So tomorrow's forecast in Chula Vista, we're at 66 degrees, 67 into San Diego, 65 in Oceanside. We've got periods of rain in the forecast. And then for Thursday, mostly cloudy skies, 67 degrees along the coast and partly sunny on Friday with a high of 67. A shower or two coming back in on Saturday and then rain and drizzle on Sunday. So we're keeping the wet weather around this weekend. Inland areas cooler with rain for Wednesday. Thursday is mainly cloudy. We get a break with some sunshine on Friday, but then for the weekend, we're looking at another chance for some rain. Mountain locations, we've got periods of rain, some of it heavy. 48 degrees, and then for Thursday, mostly cloudy, partly sunny on Friday and Saturday. Desert areas cool with rain, 62 degrees. On Thursday, mostly cloudy, partly sunny for Friday, Saturday, and on into Sunday as well. I'm Regina Miller, KPBS News.
Don't look now, but your TV could be spying on you. Smart TVs were a big hit on Black Friday and Cyber Monday, and tonight the FBI is warning consumers that screens with advanced technology like cameras and microphones could be hacked by cyber criminals who could potentially snoop or stalk you. To protect yourself, the FBI recommends changing the default password and to update the software. Also consider putting black tape over the camera or disabling the microphone. International trade tension is escalating to new heights. This as President Trump meets with world leaders at the NATO summit in London. As Camilla Bernal reports, Trump's trade threats toward China, France, and South America could create even more backlash.
The Dow deep in the red. This after President Trump says a trade deal with China may happen much later than expected.
I have no deadline, no. In some ways, I think it's better to wait till after the election.
President Trump in London meeting with world leaders at the NATO summit. But back home, it's the second straight day that the Dow took a dive.
I don't watch the stock market. I watch jobs.
And it's not just tensions with China that may spook investors. On Monday, the U.S. proposed tariffs on French goods like cheese and champagne. This in response to France's digital tax aimed at American tech companies.
We have a minor dispute. I think we'll probably be able to work it out.
Meanwhile, President Trump also threatening to slap tariffs on aluminum and steel imports from Brazil and Argentina, blaming the massive devaluation of their currencies.
I gave them a big break on tariffs, but now I'm taking that break off because it's very unfair to our manufacturers and very unfair to our farmers.
And while at NATO meetings, Trump also pointing to a possible trade deal with Mexico and Canada, blaming Democrats for not passing it in Congress.
It's been sitting in Congress now for 6 or 7 months, and it's a great deal for everybody. So hopefully they can get it done and get it done fast.
House Speaker Nancy Pelosi has said she wants to hold a vote on that deal by the end of the year. Camila Bernal, KPBS News.
President Trump is overseas this week as a new round of impeachment hearings is set to begin. Today, the House Intelligence Committee wrapped up its part with a 300-page report on the public hearings and closed-door testimony we've seen so far. But President Trump says he's not concerned.
We are winning so big. We had our biggest fundraising month ever. We've had last quarter was unbelievable. I have my best poll numbers that I've ever had. The impeachment hoax is going nowhere. The Republican Party has never been so unified as it is right now. I have never seen anything like it.
The White House says it won't participate in the next round of hearings. Today's report accuses President Trump of placing his political interests above national interests, undermining the integrity of U.S. elections and endangering national security. And KPBS will have live coverage tomorrow when the House Judiciary Committee begins its work. It could lead to formal articles of impeachment. You can listen, stream, and watch starting at 7 a.m. on all KPBS platforms.
I'm Judy Woodruff. Tonight on the NewsHour, the U.S. House Intelligence Committee lays out the case for impeaching President Trump. Coming up at 7 after Evening Edition on KPBS.
Chula Vista became the first city in California to be designated a welcoming city. Officials held a ceremonial flag-raising ceremony today. The designation means the city must meet rigorous welcoming standard requirements for immigrant inclusion. Among them, government leadership, equitable access, economic development, and education. And tonight's big story has been about political power in East County, but there's more to it than the case of Congressman Duncan Hunter. A thriving immigrant community in El Cajon is looking to make inroads. That includes the Chaldeans, a religious and ethnic minority from Iraq. KPBS reporter Claire Tregesser has this story from our California Dream series.
Walk down Main Street in El Cajon and you feel like you're on the set of an old Western. The wide street is lined with old-fashioned storefronts selling antique furniture and used clothes. Across the street in a park, there was a different scene. More than 100 people gathered in solidarity with the protests in Iraq. They made speeches and sang in Arabic.
I feel torn between my country, United States, and between my homeland.
Widad Shlada was a leader at the protest. She moved to the U.S. in the 1980s, but still feels a strong connection with Iraq.
I came to the United States to study and return, but I fell in love with the democracy and the sense of justice and the educational opportunities.
El Cajon lies about 10 miles inland from San Diego, and its population is more than 70% white. Its politics are conservative, Republican. But in recent decades, the city has been changing. It's now home to one of the largest Iraqi Chaldean populations in the country, estimated at over 15,000.
This is St. Michael Chaldean Catholic Church.
Besma Koda strides through a large complex in El Cajon that houses a Chaldean church, a Chaldean school, and a Chaldean radio station.
This is in the hub of the community.
She works at a nonprofit that helps new arrivals adjust to their new city. Koda says once El Cajon was established as a destination for Chaldeans, that's where refugees want to come.
When they hear about the community here, they would take their stuff after they were settled, and then they drive to San Diego. So they come to El Cajon.
And the community here has been thriving. Restaurants, clothing stores, jewelry shops, and corner markets are owned by Chaldeans catering to their community. But there is still one area where Koda would like to see Chaldeans make more progress.
Political, we're not there yet, but I'm hoping that the new generation, after they go into all these majors, becoming lawyers, becoming different career, they're taking different careers. I hope that they will be involved with the politics and they get into a higher positions.
Okay. Come on in.
And that may be beginning to happen. Mike Akrai is one of the area's top real estate agents.
70% of my clients are Middle Eastern and Chaldean Middle Eastern, and 30% are local residents who are selling their homes to my clients.
And now he's running for a seat on the city council, vying to be one of the first to represent the interests of his community.
There is people who migrate and they are low income, they live in an apartment and they are trying to improve their life, and they're gonna happen to have those challenges.
Those people need reduced crime and better services, he says.
And the other people who's improving their lives, who's like trying to, improve Cajon as well by opening more business.
Those people need easier permitting processes and better city planning. So far, no one is challenging Acraee for the city council seat. After years of enduring religious persecution in Iraq, the community is hoping new political power will move them from the sidelines to become an even more interwoven part of their city. Claire Tregesser, KPBS News.
And here's a recap of our top story. Congressman Duncan Hunter pleads guilty in his corruption case. The Republican from Alpine entered a plea to one count of misusing campaign funds. It's a major reversal. For more than a year, Hunter claimed the case was politically motivated. Margaret Hunter, his wife, reached a plea deal months ago. Both were accused of using campaign money to fund their personal lifestyle. Congressman Hunter will be sentenced on March 17th. He has yet to announce when or if he will resign from Congress. And you can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org/evening edition. Thank you for joining us tonight. Have a great evening.